Readings August 31st, 2014, and I'm with a drawing. I don't know if anyone has ever seen this. The original ink portions of it were drawn on site, seated outdoors at the Auschwitz Death and Extermination Camp Complex, State Museum. It's I wrote here, Auschwitz, 29th July 1984, wall, comma, gate, comma, bricks, something, barracks. So I can, it's pretty abstracted, but I can make out some bits and pieces here, like the posts that had a electrified barbed wire strung between. I see one of those lamps there that one can see also in photographs of the at the death camp site. I remember being struck by how pristine everything was at the Auschwitz part of the National Museum Memorial. It's like an education center. All the red bricks were in great shape. Of course, there were displays, photographs, and what have you inside. But I remember thinking at the time that, God, this looks like it's all ready to be used. The windows are washed, the brick walls are in terrific shape, and so on. Later, from there, we got on the bus and we drove over a few kilometers perhaps, to Birkenau. And I remember we walked along the tracks into or underneath the guard tower. I walked up the guard tower, looked out, and most of the buildings there had been torn down, and there were a few remaining barracks near that part of the Birkenau death extermination camp complex. And I went in one of the barracks, and I remember, I have notes about this that I wrote a few years later. But just from memory, I remember I was the only one in the barracks. It was completely silent. There were no birds. Light was coming through the windows, if there were windows. I don't remember if they were still there or not. There were latrines in one. I think I walked into two of them. One of them had latrines in the air. The other had like these bunks where several prisoners would sleep on each kind of slat of wood. But it was eerie. It was the silence. It was like I just felt kind of like the spirit of death in the air. One of the troubling things to me about what's going on right now in terms of Holocaust education is the complete unwillingness and disinterest in correct history and its obscene twists and perversion by professional Jew haters and Holocaust deniers. I won't mention organization names, but their websites are ever more polished and sophisticated. And it's a real problem when you have the New York Times, an endless array of articles in recent years in which Auschwitz is called a concentration camp rather than a death and extermination camp. The Forward, a large Jewish weekly newspaper published in New York with online and hard copy editions. I've written any number of letters to the editor. I've personally written the publisher and Samuel Norich, the senior editor, Jane Eisner, an appeal to them to cease calling Auschwitz and the other death camps that were in Poland, Nazi death camps, concentration camps, but they've refused. And so we have an endless litany of articles and even editorials in which Auschwitz-Birkenau, Sobibor, Majdanek, Treblinka, Belzec, these were mass murder camps, are called concentration camps. The Holocaust deniers love it. They use that to perpetrate their obscene and perverse lies that there were no mass murders, that there were no gas chambers and no gassings, and that the prisoners, Jewish and others, died of disease and typhus and hunger and so on, but there was no mass extermination. And they also use the fact, they also love it when the Forward maybe other Jewish newspapers are doing the same thing, and the secular press led by the New York Times, claims or describes the death camps as concentration camps because the professional Holocaust deniers use that to perpetrate their lies that the Nazi death camps were not any dissimilar to, say, for example, the internment camps that housed Japanese Americans in the mainland during World War II. Now, however horrible those camps were, like in Montana and so on, they were not mass murder extermination camps. So I find it very disheartening when the Jewish community itself lends itself willingly to Holocaust revisionism, and which is like only one snap of the fingers away from Holocaust denial. The Holocaust denial groups also, will compare the death camps like at Treblinka and Auschwitz to internment camps which house refugees, sometimes for intergenerationally from different, following wars in different regions, like Namibia, Southwest Africa, and Southeast Asia, and so on. But we'll see. Those of us who do Holocaust education have just to continue the campaign to have the history stated correctly, factually, and historically. And Auschwitz-Birkenau had thousands of slave laborers who were in concentration camp units within the camp complex. For example, most famously, for example, Primo Levi was in a sub-camp. It was like from IG Farben or Iggy Farben, and the German industrial concern, where he was a slave laborer. But the main purpose of Auschwitz and Birkenau were mass murder, and over, I think, 1.5 million people were murdered there, mainly Jews. So to call it a concentration camp, which is also what the Auschwitz State Memorial does, is really troubling. It's Holocaust revisionism that's completely unnecessary. Another problem with the Auschwitz State Museum website is they don't allow anyone to do any contact. So there's no email addresses provided, no links within the site. If students anywhere have questions, they have to write by snail mail. In this day and age, that's just totally absurd, especially when the professional Holocaust denial sites have contacts. They even offer money for writing contests and essays and so on. So I'm not going to give up the battle to convince the Forward, the New York Times, and the Auschwitz State Museum with their website to change course and use the words death and or extermination camp in the websites. Google, YouTube also abets the Holocaust revisionism. They have Auschwitz concentration camp as a default tag, when Auschwitz death camp or Auschwitz extermination camp would be more, not only more appropriate, but would be factually correct. Ditto some of the Wikipedia pages on the death camps that were in Poland, the Nazi death camps.